and welcome back to the Irish Hunting Podcast, the number one place for your hunting, fishing and country sports stories from around the world. Stick on the kettle, crack open a beer, pull up the feet, relax and enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to episode 109 of the Irish Hunting Podcast. This week, with the honour and pleasure of having one of the most recognisable faces in deer stalking and hunting onto the podcast. With over 35 years experience stalking and even longer than that hunting, it's Mr. David Dunne. So do what I'm doing. Pull up your chair by the crackle of a fire, and most importantly, enjoy this one, folks. Mr. David Dunne.
Yep.
Thank you finally for agreeing to come on to the Irish Hunting Podcast. We've been at your tail for a while.
Well, I finally got here anyway.
You finally got here, yeah.
So
You're not a man I know for the spotlight. You want to stay in the background, but we wanted to try and tap into your wealth of experience and knowledge. So thanks a million for coming on.
absolutely no problem. No problem. As you say, it's been a long time on the cards.
It has been. I know I felt like a little bit of a stalker for a while. So
We're finally here.
we're finally here. Come here, Davey. We'll rewind the clock a little bit if we can. You're probably similar vintage to myself. So how and when did you get into hunting, and how did it start, I suppose?
Well, to start, when I started, like, automatically when you turned 16, you applied for a shotgun, because in my area, in my location, in Roscrea, in the vicinity of Roscrea, every teenager just wanted to start off, get a dog and get a shotgun. It was just one of the things that was a goal for most of my friends at the time.
Yeah.
And it was good to see. And licensing there was very strict, and the gun club was there, and there was a huge interest in dogs, and game shooting was the main port of call, mainly pheasants, woodcock and ducks. But back then in our area it was mainly pheasants, but as we know, that trend is on the decrease now, which is a shame,
Yeah.
But that's where we are today.
So you started in wild game, essentially of the feathered kind. First shotgun, can you remember?
First shotgun was, of course, what everyone had back then, a Bakel single-barrel shotgun.
The good old Baker.
Between 40 and 50 euro in Mick O'Connell's and Turles.
There you go. There wasn't a house in the country, I don't think, had one of them go through the door at some stage or another.
A Bakel.
Yeah.
They were brought in the container load by RD Sports, what I remember. And the entry level was the Bakel. If you had a few more quid to spend, you could get an ejector model.
Yes.
Which was 15 pounds more, but we all had non-ejectors.
Yeah. Needs must at the time.
Yeah.
And dog-wise, what did you start with, Dave?
I always had terriers.
Terriers.
And to this date, I still have a terrier whose media fame is getting to be way more popular than I ever was. Bonnie, she's with me for the last 8 years and has just proven herself exceptional, especially when it comes to deer. And I will take absolutely no credit for the way that dog turned out. Everyone is saying, how did you train her? She was just natural from day one. When she was a pup and I used to come home with the deer, she'd scratch at the door. She'd come out, inspect each deer, tail the deer and back into the house. And we thought nothing of it. And we went from there to her first outing at about 6 months, and I had her on a lead that was attached to my belt, one of those kind of walker leads.
Yeah.
And I had one of those, and I took a shot at a deer, and she was just mad to go. And she just went automatically on the track, and when she found it, she started barking and yelping. And she's just got better since then. And with her longest track on an injured animal, on a deer that was actually hit, was 3.5 kilometres.
Wow.
And we recovered that deer. So she's just proven to be outstanding. Her intelligence, her stamina and her enthusiasm with deer is just phenomenal. And I will not take any credit for the way she turned out.
Well, look, she's had plenty of exposure in the house, so you can take credit for that part anyway. And I can attest that you've sent me a couple of videos for the last couple of weeks, and if I probably wouldn't have believed you, only I seen it firsthand. She's a little. She's a fine little dog. So you start with terriers.
Yeah.
And was hunting in the family, Dave, or was it
my father owned 22 Anschutz semi-automatic. Back then there was very few silencers or suppressors, so it was always Winchester Super X was the go-for bullet. And then if you couldn't afford the Winchester Super X, the other option was Eli bullets, Eli .22 bullets. And then when you were broke, which I was most of the time back then, was Vostok bullets. They were $1.50 a box of 50. So
that's a while ago.
That is a while, and I haven't seen them in decades. But they were Vostok. I think they were Russian. They were brought in Vostok bullets. They were solid bullets. They weren't even a hollow point, but they were cheap. And if you were doing headshots on rabbits, they were absolutely fine out to 50, 60 yards. And they were a very cheap option. And they were less than half the price of the regular 22s, the Super X, which was the go-for bullet.
At the time. Very good. And then, I suppose, so you start off a game. Do you still do a bit of a game?
I do a little bit of game. I just go for a walk along the local river in the winter time for a mallard.
Yeah.
Would you believe Bonnie retrieves ducks off water as well?
Wow.
She is, and she had some recoveries from weeded rivers as well. So the minute she fires a shot, she would go in and retrieve a duck off water. Yes. Now a mallard is a fair bird for a terrier.
Absolutely.
And she will do it. So pheasant wise, I do so little now. Just as a traditional thing, myself and my son go on Stephen's Day after Christmas Day, Stephen's Day, and we go for a walk on a local thing. We bring Bonnie and we go for a walk for a pheasant or woodcock. And that is about the height of my pheasant shooting nowadays.
Yeah.
As you know, I mainly now concentrate on deer.
Yeah.
Deer is where I'm at.
You don't miss the feather?
It's just our location now wouldn't be what you call a really good pheasant area. And in fairness to the gun club in the locality, to do try and to do release birds, but it's not as it was.
Yeah.
And I'd say that relates to a lot of hunting ground around the country with a lot of other hunters. It's just a trend, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a trend, which is sad.
Yeah, it is. And look, you were telling a story there of Stephen's Day, and I think a lot of households around the country. One of my first books I remember reading, I think I threw it up on the page there a while ago, and I remember reading through. It was one of the ones that kind of when I was younger, I read this book kind of religiously, and it was the talk of, you know, the Stephen's Day tradition of many families like yourself, your son going out and coming home then and having a dinner and having the stories, and it's not necessarily, as we all can attest to, it's probably the bags have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, and but it's more the traditional aspect and the whole. There's a community there. There's also family traditions like your own, and I hope for all our sakes that continues to be there.
I hope that tradition does continue. But you see, when you go back to the early 80s or late 80s and 90s, a lot of the shooting was putting food on the table, which would have been mainly rabbits. Back in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, we had a huge rabbit population, which is now diminished to small pockets of rabbits just around the country, mainly down south. They still have good numbers down there, but most rabbit populations in the Midlands and generally everywhere and in the West have diminished to just small pockets of rabbits. And I think when the rabbit left us, and it really had a huge impact on hunting with a rifle, especially a 2.2, because the 2.2's main quarry back then was rabbit shooting. Yeah. And when the rabbits went, that really diminished popularity of hunting with 2.2s, which was a shame. But I've seen a lot of lads have gone down an alternative route with the 2-2s, and they've gone into target shooting, this long range shooting, which is another form of sport. It's not for me, but they seem to be very popular, and any form of sporting rifle shooting, I'm all for. So if lads really enjoy that, they're doing amazing things at the Midlands, shooting out to 600 yards and beyond with 2-2, while back in our day, a long shot would have been 100, 120 yards, would have been a shot to talk about. And now that seems to be just standard issue at the Midlands with a 2-2, which is amazing, and fair play to them.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Look, you kind of mentioned it there. It's a great entry into the sport, the 2-2 rifle with, as you say, a few rabbits and stuff for younger people coming into sport, and to get into probably the natural progression onto what we're going to be talking about, into deer and so on, and foxing, and I think it's a shame. What do you put the decline in rabbits down to?
Rabbits definitely down to RHD, rabbit hemorrhaging disease. That came into our area. I'm not quite sure the year, but within 3 to 4 years, we had one of the highest population of rabbits, especially around about 6 miles from my own home place and out by the railway track. You could go out there at an ease in an evening and shoot 20, 25 rabbits. And I used to shoot quite a lot of rabbits, and they used to make, back then, 90 pence a rabbit, a headshot rabbit. And I used to shoot 25 an evening at my ease. And considering I was working all week in the factory, in the meat industry for £80, I was doing better on the rabbits than I was in work. So it was great, and it really taught you how to shoot.
Yeah.
Because everything had to be headshot, and everything was recovered, and the most important thing with any kind of game shooting, everything was used.
Yeah.
Everything was used, which was good.
I think that's it's a shame. Like, we look at our life kids, myself, same as yourself, and for when I was growing up, there was local golf course. You could collect a few golf balls, sell them. You could, like what you were saying, there was a few bob in for tails and gun clubs and stuff like that. So there was lots of ways for younger people to make a few quid for themselves, and also get outdoors, which is like my own kids at home. They'll probably tell you my biggest arguments with them is phones and TVs and stuff. And my kids would be probably outdoors more than most now, but I think it's a huge shame that we're losing all of those little pockets of things for them to do, to get outside, to earn a few quid legitimately, and while exercising, getting out in nature, getting out and having a pastime that's not probably, I don't know whether you were, I wasn't, traditionally into the traditional sports in terms of football and stuff like that. If you weren't, there was very little else, So you spoke about long distance shooting and target shooting now. I think it's imperative that we promote those sports as a gateway into other sports within the hunting communities, because if we don't have them, then we've very little else outside of the traditional sports for our kids, So we'll have to keep banging the drum. So that takes us on. How did you start getting into? How did you first get into deer shooting?
Deer shooting. Well, of course, I started off like the normal route was with a 2-2. Again, purchased from Mick O'Connell, a Bruno Model 2 2-2, and suppressors were just coming onto the market then. And the only suppressor that I remember being available was a Parker Hale. And I got this accessory with subsonic Winchester Super X ammunition, and that transformed rabbit hunting in general. It made it really good but even access to lands back then was so much easier. If you were going shooting a rabbit or two, you just maybe met the farmer while you were doing it, and you said, "Oh, by the way, is it okay?"
It's okay, yeah.
Oh, as many as you can. And it was a total relaxed attitude towards firearms and guns then, which, as we know, attitude is changing, That attitude is changing, and I even see on your own podcast there, just reminding lads about shooting on lands, the guard saying you must seek permission from the landowner prior to shooting, which is fair enough, and it's as it should be, but it's getting a lot more difficult, especially to young people, to access lands where shooting. And farming has changed so much, and our hedges and the cover. And as I said, now with the rabbit population virtually gone compared to what it used to be,
yeah.
it's just getting more difficult.
Yeah.
It is getting more difficult.
Yeah, look, we all have, I think, a role to play in it. But as you said, it is, compared to years ago, you know, you as you say, you could go out, turn left on the door and keep walking. You could walk for the day without, you know, having to have any particular permission. It was kind of like it was taken for granted in the locality. Young Dunne or young Rowan down there walking, you know, she's taking care of the rabbits or a few foxes or whatever. But as we all know, that's not the case now. Look, that's a shame in one way, in that it relied on trust and goodwill on both sides. Probably the actions of a few have cost the actions, or you know,
there has been repercussions,
unfortunately. But so yeah, and then how did you get into? So that was the first rifle. So how did you decide, right, I'm going after the big one?
I used to shoot in locations where, now back then, you'd see an occasional deer. You wouldn't see them regularly, but you'd see them occasionally.
Yeah.
And we were all thinking, geez, would that be a great asset to have on the table, like, and free meat and everything. And I was butchering at that at the time. I was in the meat industry, and so, you know, the handling of a carcass was already there. So all I needed was the carcass.
Yeah.
So I decided to go and get a rifle. But back then, unfortunately, we were limited to the 22-250.
Yeah.
That was it. If you were posh and you had more money, you could get a 5.6, 5.7.
Okay.
And you had two options there, a Creco and a Vore. And they were the only two options available for the 5.6, 5.7. And you had only one option of bullet manufacturer, which was RWS. And RWS produced a 74 grain cone pint bullet. And that was equal to 243, what 243 is today. It's a bit faster even, and it is quite an effective round for midweight games such as deer.
Yeah.
But it was... the bullets for 5.6, 5.7 back then, compared to a box of 22-250, used to cost me $15.50 per box. And that was Winchester, Super X, or you had Remington Corlock.
Okay.
They were your choice. There was very little, and there was very little deer stalking, and there was very little interest in deer stalking when I started. I think there was only one other person in my whole vicinity that actually had a deer hunting license and shot deer. And you could lease a wood, but you'd never bother because you could just walk and get shooting easy enough back then. And so I purchased BSA CF2 was the first rifle I had, and I had a Bushnell 6X scope on it. It was a used rifle, and it came in from the UK, and even trying, the best I could get, it was about 1.5 inches, 2 inches, so I was very disappointed. And after the first season, I upgraded to a Remington 700 BDL Deluxe. I went out on a limb, and I had a Tasco World Class 3-9x40 scope on it. There was issues with zero hold, and then I upgraded to a 6x42 Smith & Bender, which cost at the time almost as much as the rifle did. John O'Malley, Ackle Island was the importer, I think, back then of Smith & Bender, and I saved hard. And to be honest, I shot a lot of deer with that. It was a super accurate rifle, the Remington 700 BDL Deluxe. The Deluxe model I just had better wood, had an ebony forend and a bit of engraving on the action. But it was an attractive rifle, and with the 6x42 Smith & Bender on it, I could group under 1/2 inch, no problem at all, rested up at 100 yards. But it also taught you how to shoot.
Yeah.
Because 22-50, if anyone knows calibers, it isn't an ideal candidate. I know that some people think it is, but I was shooting it a long time. It taught you how to shoot.
Yeah.
22-50, we used to use the 55 grain bullet, soft point bullet, and it was unreliable on a shoulder shot because there wasn't a 100% guarantee of it actually penetrating the shoulder and getting into the vital organs. So it taught you how to shoot. So generally back then I'd like to stalk in 100 yards, and if I could get 60 yards or 70 yards, I'd take
You'd
it.
take it, yeah.
I'd go in
Yeah.
and I'd shoot either high neck or back of the head. Never face on. Never face on. It would cause a horrific injury. And even today's calibers, I always urge people, especially out of the course, if not to take headshots. Headshots are... There's so much can go wrong on a headshot.
Yeah.
If the deer is facing you, the deer's nose is a long area, and if it's looking at you, you might knock the deer, but it's going to get up and have a horrific injury, and then you'll be looking for the services of Bonnie.
Yeah.
Which is not
It's not ideal.
So the 22 to 50 just taught you to shoot. It was okay on light females, yearlings and calves to take hard long shots.
Yeah.
Quite effective. But anything bigger, and I remember going out in the rut and the fallow rut and the grunting, I wouldn't take a shot beyond 100 yards, and it had to be a neck shot.
Yeah.
It had to be, and it taught you how to shoot. But there was so little people involved in deer stalking then, and I hadn't an apprenticeship into deer stalking. So a combination of just knowledge of firearms and learning as I go, that's really it. But the only thing that stood to me back then is I had the whole butchery background.
Yeah.
So the minute we got a carcass, I could have that carcass dealt with within minutes and home and skinned and everything, because back then I was covered as a slaughterman for both cattle, sheep and horses and pigs. The license, slaughter license on all those. So that really stood to us.
So, yeah.
You know, like it so the carcass part, which is a kind of a wall that a lot of hunters run into, is right. I've shot the deer, I'm looking down at it.
Now the work starts, yeah.
What next and how?
I suppose, Dave, just on that, obviously we don't have a huge lineage of hunting mid-range game in the country for various reasons. Obviously, our history didn't allow it, and obviously we've a relatively short history with hunting. Did your experience with the butchering end, did that help when you went to shoot, like in terms of anatomy and shot placement, especially with the
it made me, you know, compared to most stalkers who are learning. And you must remember, you hadn't YouTube and all this
exactly
references,
that's what I mean.
And you hadn't Google.
So we were learning on the job.
You were learning. So I had that background taught to me in the meat industry, and it really made me, you know, like, and a lot of people back then, and I used to help a lot of people back then with the stalking and the butchering, showing him bleeding, skinning, and right into this day, as you know, I'm involved in the training programs, and I really enjoy passing on what I know of shooting experiences, butchering especially. I'm part of the hygiene course with Country Sports Ireland. I do the practical side, the carcass handling, and people learn a lot from that. And I have a YouTube channel. I do have a YouTube channel there, and I show all just simple methods of carcass handling and prep. And even back in the day, I used to manage a few deer farms, and I used to do a lot of culling. And then I said, wouldn't this be a great opportunity for people with an interest in stalking to learn? So I remember bringing people on to these deer farm culls where everyone was hands-on, bringing in the deer, hanging him, learning how to skin, learning how to butcher, and it was great. And it really started my interest in instruction.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I think, one of the reasons, obviously, part of the reasons we wanted to try and get you on, obviously, look, you've helped. I know some of them. I know we have mutual friends, and that you've helped along the way. I think it's fantastic what you're doing. I know you're the last one to take credit for it, but that's our job essentially, is to try and, you know, bring the next group of lads on, and hopefully they'll pass it on. You came through it the hard way, with limited artillery, limited ammunition, and probably limited knowledge from being able to go to an elder statesman like what we are probably now, to gain some of that knowledge. So it's imperative, and it's brilliant what you're doing. And talk us through then, I suppose, how
did you go from, your first couple of seasons? What type of numbers were you shooting?
Back then, would you believe it if I said to you, I'm looking back at it, there was less deer back then than there is today. And I was only shooting in my locality. So I wasn't going into other counties. I wasn't going up to Wicklow or anything like that. I was really within a 10 to 15 mile radius of my hometown.
Yeah.
And that's where I was really limited to. And you wouldn't even dream of going outside that.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't know anyone.
Yeah.
And then it was just building up relationships with landowners, and then someone would say, well, I have a lad that comes in and knocks a few deer, and and another farmer said, just have some deer of mine, they're knocking fences or something, or usually I wouldn't mind a bit of deer meat. And I used to do exchanges, shooting and promise them a deer butchered up and barter my way into a lot of areas, and the numbers weren't significant then. They weren't high. I wasn't doing high numbers because, number one, back then I didn't have access to a game dealer.
Yeah.
So we were really shooting for the table.
Yeah.
So, and even to this day, I will not kill anything that I can't find a home for, be it ourselves, friends, family, or a game dealer.
Yeah.
Like everything that I shoot back then and what I shoot today, everything is recovered and everything will enter the food chain.
Yeah.
Someone will be at the receiving end of it. And that's the way hunting should be.
Yeah.
I think,
Without a doubt. And it was predominantly fallow, was it?
It was predominantly fallow in my area.
Yeah.
Predominantly fallow.
And then I suppose we expand on then. What's your, talk about the species of deer, what's your favourite deer to hunt?
It's only in recent years, it wouldn't be that long, only in the last maybe 10 years or so, I got into the Sika hunting, and I got access to lands and leases in Wicklow, and I got into the Sika, and I do have to say, I do enjoy the Sika. People do say, which is the better deer to eat? I honestly can't tell much of a difference.
Yeah.
I've tried both. Just if anyone is wondering which is the nicest to eat, I have to say of them all, that's slightly better than the rest would be a red deer calf. Yeah. A red deer calf has to be the nicest bit of venison you'll put on the table. But one of my favourite deers to hunt would definitely be the Sika. I think it's just a European thing.
Yeah.
Everyone and maybe it's the forked antlers and the chance. You have a better opportunity, especially in Ireland, of getting a trophy Sika than you would a trophy fallow. Now I have taken a few good fallow. I'm not, even though my friends, I'm connected to friends that measure heads and all that.
Yeah.
I'm not into getting measured or medal. Yeah. Medals don't mean anything to me. I have a few trophies I keep at home. They really relate to a memory, or if someone I was with, or a particular time I was with someone, and that's what the trophy is there for. It's not because it's big, it's not because it's a gold medal.
Yes.
It's there for a reason, because I shared that moment with someone. I have some heads that I look at, and it just recalls
automatically
that
brings
memory
you back
to that moment.
Yeah.
And I don't have too many trophies in my house, but I have a lot of memories. I think I've the hallway in my landing, and I have a good few trophies put up there. I think I gave you a glimpse.
You did.
There's
we'll get
there's some unusual ones there.
There is. Look, I think just on that, because again, I remember we had Adam Grendon, who he was a huge trophy hunter over in Alaska and stuff, and I remember this personally. I remember going into a neighbour of mine who hunts, and he has some trophy animals in, and he's a little kind of game room kid out, and I wasn't really into trophies, similar to yourself. I actually didn't do any. I know it was mostly I loved the meat. I loved the thought of putting on for the family and stuff. And he brought me in, and one of his best friends unfortunately passed away. And he was showing me, it actually turned out to be a bronze medal, red. And he was showing me on the wall, and he said, there was a picture beside it with him, and we hunted it together. And he was telling me, and you could see it, and it was kind of there, and it kind of clicked. And I started then. So if you come into my house, the trophies are definitely not medal standard, but each one of them will mean something, or so
It's the exact same in my place.
yeah, it represents a moment in time. And look, somebody said, I think, oh, sure, when you're dead and gone, they'll be just thrown to skip, and so be it. But while they're there, and please God, I get to an age where I can look back and recount that and tell the grandkids at some stage, So I know it probably gets a bad light from people who don't understand hunting, but for people inside hunting, I think it's a valuable asset. It's a nice way to. It's our method of photography, isn't it? We don't get to take a picture of an animal. I know there's technology now that can do it, but generally we don't. So, and so your favourite deer obviously is
Would be the
Sika. Yeah,
would be the Sika. I have great respect for the fallow, and I'm of an age now where red deer hunting is just getting a little tough.
Yeah.
It's getting a little tough. There was a time, and I'd love every year looking forward to my trips to Donegal and my trips to Scotland and pulling and hauling reds and hardship involved. And now it's just like,
yeah. The thought of the bit after, yeah. See, I think it changes when the excitement is all about getting one in the scope and, stalk it in and so on. And now that slightly changes to, I know what's going to happen the minute I pull this trigger,
Yeah.
And that realization quickly. But look, I've seen a few videos. You're still well able to manhandle the reds. In fairness, there's probably a few more left there yet, Davey. I'd say.
There's a couple of reds every year.
Yeah.
And the cursing is becoming more frequent during the extraction of each one of them. But and a lot of time it's never again. But we're back to follow.
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
We're back to follow.
Just to test the joints, make sure everything's in working order.
And in fairness, we have some of the best reds in Europe. We have some of the heads and some of the reds that are coming out of Sligo, Mayo, Mead, all up around that area. And I've seen some of the heads. Some of my friends have shot the heads and have given me access to hunting with them after these and they're just phenomenal trophies. But I'm not going to dwell too much on reds. If you're going after reds, just be prepared. If you have someone that's already shooting reds and they have access to a quad and heist and all that, take that all on board, because the manual handling involved in reds, and we shot some up to, in the wild. My biggest red, actually, that was shot wild on the scales was 164 kilos. That's a lot. That's a four-man job of even moving.
Yeah.
And that's moving very slowly.
Yeah.
So 164 I remember we're involved in a large red deer cull on a deer farm, and we put one over the scales at 210 kilo carcass weight. That's head, feet removed and cleaned out. That is, you're coming into phenomenal weight. And it was an absolute massive red. I think it was they brought Wapiti in to the bloodline, and I remember this really large. And even when we seen him running around this 6-acre field, and we even pulling him with the quad and getting him over, we had a heist set up at the big refrigerated lorry, so we could take him up and deal with the carcasses and that. And there was some phenomenal sizes with phenomenal heads.
Wow.
And that. So that was
it's
something
over
else.
Fun.
Yeah. It was something else. We had 72 in one day. 72, 6-man team.
Wow.
And we did 72 reds in one day onto the back of a lorry, chill lorry. And they all went into meat processing. It was just a man. Back in the 90s, deer farming was being promoted in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I think it was Mulcahy, down around Tipperary Care, brought in all these breeding reds, so he set you up. But then the market fell apart and people ended up with these deer farms and all these deer and little or no value in them. So they just cashed them in, and I got contracted to a lot of them just to come out, cull, organised deer to be taken away, butchered. And I remember we even going to the rendering plant with a 4-wheel trailer, big high trailer, 2 and 3 times that day with just waste from this. It was quite a phenomenal task, but we took it on and we got through it. And that's where most of them, and actually, if you think about it, when all that happened, some of the deer farms were neglected and escapees got out, and they introduced reds into areas where there was never reds before.
Yeah.
Never reds before.
Yeah, and look, I suppose that just on that point, and we've talked just before we came on, in terms of the meat handling aspect. And it's one of the things where, I'd love to see, I know we would love to see in terms of the podcast, I know you're probably the same, the promotion of wild game, and the for all involved, from the hunting aspect, and obviously then to create a market for, like, we're talking now in the age of processed meat and processed foods, and should be top of the pile.
We're sitting on an asset that isn't really taken advantage of. Like, by all accounts, deer, definitely, I do agree that the population of deer has gone higher. I will accept it. It's not, and I never get into an argument over population with anyone, because there is what we call hotspot areas where the population does need to be taken down a decent percentage. But there's a lot of people, and the local guys are keeping it steady, and which they're doing a great job. But, I hate when deer are getting a bad image, especially on the press and on media.
Yeah.
Because, if you were to listen to some of the media reports and on the news and on telly, you'd think you were going to walk out on your main street and get trampled by deer.
Yeah.
Which is not the case. Not the case. There is, and I'll accept there is definitely an increase in the population, but also what's happening is there's deer have moved into areas where they were never seen before.
Yeah.
That's why people are seeing deer now, that they're saying, well, deer are everywhere, but they are, but they have just, in recent years, there's some localities where there's never been deer, but a few deer are starting to appear now in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So definitely they're getting more widespread. And
but then also farming practices have a lot to play. If there's a high pressure in one area, these are deer that can easily travel.
They're free roaming.
Exactly. So, and it's a constantly moving target, because we don't, and nor can we get to the grips with the numbers and so on and so forth. I know that's a different conversation anyhow, but I still think we should have a better and I'm talking from a country perspective here. We're sitting on a premium meat. I consider it premium meat. I know
Absolutely.
You do. If you go to the continent, it's held in huge regard in that, it's top of the menu, rather than where we have it here now is you get sporadically in some high-end hotels, but other than that, it's not really promoted to the extent that I think it should be,
Yeah, I definitely agree. And as I said, since I started hunting and the amount of venison we consume throughout the year, I'm surprised my 2 young lads didn't grow antlers. They didn't know any other meat for so long, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with either of those. And even for my lunch today, I had venison liver pate, and it was absolutely fabulous. And I'd be always looking forward to a new way of presenting or a new way of doing venison. You can't just have roasts and steaks.
Yes.
So there's loads of other ways. And the thing about venison is it's so versatile. I put up some clips and I put them up on media where I've done venison sausage and venison burgers, and twice a year I go to this place where I have access to all the proper machinery to turn out. I bring about 4 carcasses boned out with me, and we spend the whole day. And I totally enjoy it. And we make venison sausages, venison burgers, and that's all we do with all that. And I have a litany of people with their hand out waiting for their share when I do this. And it's absolute, as I said, there's nothing like a well-made venison burger, and it's the highest protein content in any red meat, the lowest fat, as you say. It's a premium meat source that should be taken way more advantage, especially when we have it practically in every county now.
Yeah, exactly.
Every county.
Exactly. And you mentioned, I'm actually, at the minute, I do a yearly, I have asthma, and they bring me in for kind of a yearly check. But I'm trying to cut down a little bit on the weight, so I'm going back training and stuff. So I'm monitoring what I eat, and I was telling my young lads who train a little bit as well, and they're mad into protein powders and stuff. Yeah. And I put a couple of venison meatballs, the other day, and put 4 of them, and it was 70 grams in each. And I said, I think there was nearly 75 grams or 68 grams of protein, somewhere in that, in the 4 meatballs I put in front of them. And they were like, so I said, you do have to take now, I don't know, what is it, 4 scoops of that processed powder that's costing you. And I said, there's that, and you'll be full after. You know what I'm saying? And so it's about a little bit of education. So and I think that's you mentioned it there. It's a huge untapped resource. We've gyms around the country and there are protein powders and bars and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. This is very little carbs, very low fat, as you said. And hugely high in protein, and you couldn't get better.
And it's totally organic.
Yeah.
No, nothing goes in. There's no normal farming procedures. They're fed artificial feeds, and they could be vetted, and they could have injections or anything, and they could be on antibiotics or anything at certain. I know the meat industry in Ireland is heavily watched and guarded, and it's one of the safest meat to eat in Ireland. But venison is 100% natural, 100% organic. All the eat out there is natural, and nearly 99% of the venison and the deer out in Ireland are healthy and fine. Because nature will take care of anything that isn't healthy.
Yes,
nature will take care of it. If you're not healthy, and if you're not fit, and if if you get sick in nature and in the wild, you won't last.
Yeah.
So that's why nature keeps the population of deer healthy. So you're getting a healthy meat source,
without a doubt.
Without a doubt, yeah.
And for us, I suppose, that get the fantastic privilege of being out and looking at them for nearly almost 12 months of the year. Be either looking, managing, or stalking them. We see they'll travel to get to good access to good food.
Good food.
They won't stay where there's not access to good quality, and they tend, much to the ire of some farmers, where we do have, what you said, the hotspots. They'll go after the nice, lovely green shoots and so on, and when it becomes tall and stringy, they'll leave it alone and go to a nice another area. So they will pick and choose, the best herbs, the best place of getting their food source, and we get all the benefit of that. So I think we'll keep banging that drum, Dave.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving on then, you got involved, you mentioned there Country Sports Ireland, the HCAP and the meat handling. How is that going?
That's going very well. The last one we had a double whammy down at Midlands. We ran both the Deer Training Certificate 1, the HCAP, and the equivalent. We ran that, and we had a fully booked out for that, and we had the meat hygiene course down there as well, and fully booked out for that, and huge successful. It's great to see the interest and the popularity of the course, and the meat hygiene courses. We're the only ones that do a practical side.
Yeah.
And I always felt, and even when we got into negotiations at the beginning with Country Sports Ireland and Ronan, we just really wanted to push a practical side to it, because, men being men, our attention span can sometimes waver.
Yeah.
So if you were in a classroom, we were saying all day, looking at slides and listening to someone going on about a subject, and there is subjects that have to be obviously covered.
Yes.
But then if you have an afternoon where you're in an abattoir or a butchery setting and you're showing things, all of a sudden your interest is perked.
Yeah.
And if you're seeing it and witnessing it and you're taking part in it, it sinks in way better.
Yeah.
So that's really been and that side of hunting and stalking, the educational side, I really enjoy.
Yeah.
And I really look forward to the courses. I look forward to the people I meet at the courses. I look forward to the friends, and there's not a week go by and someone on Messenger would be asking a question, or I'd have pictures of lungs, or I'd have pictures of growth.
Yes, yeah.
Is this okay? This
Yeah.
looks suspect. What do you think? And if I was to get paid for that, I'd be retired for now. But I actually enjoy it, and I'm not complaining. And everyone out there, please keep sending your queries into me. I might be a day or two getting to you, but believe me, I'll get back to you, and I'll give my honest opinion on it. But a lot of the times they're over worried, and that and it's just due to inexperience. As I said, nearly every animal that the general hunter will come across will be healthy.
Yeah.
It will be healthy. Only thing that might interfere with the quality is the venison is age.
Yeah.
Like the younger animals, definitely better eating. The calves, absolutely super eating. The yearlings, the prickets, absolutely super. I've absolutely nothing against trophy hunting or those guys that put the hours in and pass up on animals to get their objective, of which is a trophy.
Yeah.
I don't judge those guys, and I admire their the way they can pass on things, and patience and waiting for this certain animal to come. I don't judge them for that at all. But obviously these animals, once they pass 3 and 4 and 5 year old, they're not going to taste as well as a younger animal. So generally what I do, and if someone is shooting for the table, they'd always ask me, what's the best animal to shoot? Anything under 3 years old. Even in August and September, a 3-year-old buck, good layer of fat, summered well, he will absolutely cook and taste the absolute finest. Now, of course, we come to the rut, and the rut. Definitely the rut is great opportunity for those trophy hunters to get their trophy animal, because the animals will be only focusing on one thing, and that's getting the ladies, and they will make mistakes and they'll be more vocal. All of them will be either grunting, whistling or roaring, giving away their location. So a good time to be out if you're after a trophy. But if you're shooting a deer for the table, the rut is also a good time. That's a good time. Why? Because that big stag or that big buck or that he's keeping all the younger lads out of the scene altogether. So you will be able to pick up a pricket on the outskirts of the rutting stand, and these will be pushed out and they'll be trying to get back in, so it'll give you the opportunity of getting a young male.
So they'll be locked out
during that.
Locked out of disco.
They're not getting into the party, and they're the ones. So the rut is both good for the trophy hunter, but it's also an opportunity for those that want to put meat on the table, of getting that younger animal that's pushed outside that rutting area, and he'll be going around just with nothing on his mind, and he's just left there. So you could get that. So it's a good time of year just to be out.
Yeah, exactly.
And even just to see and witness the rut, and just to be in a wood. And you think, I often was in an area and I thought it was a low density of males in this area, and I'm not seeing bucks, and they must be all, they're moved on or shot out. And next minute the rut would start, and next minute you have a buck up here and a buck. Where have they been hiding? And it's just amazing that every year when you think there's few bucks and the rut comes in, and next minute you hear them being vocal to each other, and you could have 4 and 5 males answering each other. It's quite amazing how they can avoid the hunter.
I can see in her expressions here. I think it's the same for all of us. For people who haven't experienced it and been in the forest, it literally lights up. With the sound, there's nothing like it. It reverberates. It gets into your bones.
It just excites the hunter, because and like I've often come in on a rutting stand and I've come across a buck that wasn't quite there, and I said he wouldn't be quite good eating, and if I hadn't, I'd pass on him, and then I'd go back to reverting to picking off one of these younger males on the outside. And that. But these deer don't get to an age by being stupid. So we need to be sneakier, and they need to be
exactly.
They just gain being clever and get clever with age.
What are you shooting with now, Dave?
Oh my God. There's the question. I have I've cut back.
Yeah.
I've cut back on that. I'm shooting I'll start off with the smallest. I have a Blaser K95
Yeah.
with a little Blaser B2 scope on it. Absolutely love it. Single shot rifle, absolutely lightweight, so fast handling. Just a sweet rifle, super accurate to shoot. And that's in 243 caliber. The next one up from that would be the 7mm08, the most underrated cartridge out there. I'm shooting it. It's the longest I've had any. It's actually been rebarreled at the moment.
Okay.
I've had it 15 years. A 7mm08. Before all the latest and greatest come in, I had a 7mm08, and I don't understand why its popularity didn't explode, because it's flatter than shooting than 308, way harder hitting than 243. So you have something between the both that does a really effective job on deer, and is lighter recoiling. It has a lot going for it. So it's actually been rebarreled at the moment. It was in it's in a kind of a semi-custom job. It was a Remington blueprinted action with a Lothar Walter ultra lightweight barrel in a Macmillan light stock and a Timony trigger. And I have it 15 years and I'd never part with it. And it's going for rebarreling now. So that should be in the next couple of months. And there'll be a new exact same Lothar Walter lightweight barrel going on that. And then I have a 6.5 Creedmoor. For all those that say you've been always taking the piss out of the Creedmoor. Listen, at the end of the day, any deer legal caliber will kill deer.
Yeah.
Some do it better than others. That's just, some do it better than others. I own a Creedmoor, so I'm not being biased towards the Creedmoor. If truth be known, I had one of the first Creedmoors in the country.
Yeah.
And an Anschutz Creedmoor, super accurate gun, beautiful trigger on it, lovely wood, tack driver of a rifle. And I was just a little bit disappointed in its knockdown power on deer with hard lung shots. Now I know I'm going to get a load of criticism. My Creedmoor kills everything.
Yeah.
My Creedmoor kills deer in the next parish.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying it's not capable of killing deer.
Of course.
It's just that, in my opinion, it kind of niches between 243 and 308. It's somewhere around then. But I definitely check the performance. I'm not going to promote any particular bullet or say the bullet I use, but I've had to fool around with different rounds to find one which worked best on deer, and there's about 3 out there that I found with the 6.5 Creedmoor that worked well, but there was a lot out there that did not work well. And I got an awful lot of runners on the first few months, and I was a bit disappointed with that. But I found a few rounds that worked quite well, and the 6.5 Creedmoor is definitely a very accurate round.
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
It does, I have to say, it is a very accurate round. It's very mild recoil. So anyone new to stalking,
it's a nice round.
It's a nice round to shoot, and it is accurate. It's nice to shoot, and with proper bullet selection. And I definitely stick with the 140 grain bullet.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely stick with the 140s and just pick a brand that you hear works well.
Yeah.
You hear works well. I have a few, but they work well. It's quite an accurate round. So I have a 6.5. I have, I just recently purchased, I have it a little over a year now, and I had one back in the day. There isn't a caliber that I didn't have. So anyone asks me on calibers, I'm speaking not from books or videos, I'm speaking from experience of what this caliber and my opinion of it. Back in the day, I would have been commercially shooting deer at one point, and I had a 270, which was my opinion. We hadn't the selection of bullets or the knowledge of bullets that we have today. Mm-hmm. It was all mainly trial and error. Yeah. So I had a 270, and the bullet I used to use was the 130 grain Federal Power Shock. And it's just, if you were anyway off on base of the neck, or if you had to do a hard lung shot, I found it very destructive.
Yeah.
Super accurate caliber. A bit destructive was my whinge wood.
Yeah.
Back then. But now with today's bullets and bullet choices, you can rectify that. So 270, I have a lot of respect for 270. And my final caliber, I'm not missing one, am I? No? My final caliber is 30-06.
Yeah.
I had 30-06 when no one had 30-06, and I think it's such a good, versatile caliber. You could go the whole way from Ireland to the far end side of Europe with a 30-06, and you can handle anything.
Yeah.
And you have such a great selection of bullets and everything with it. So, listen, as I said, I'm not biased on calibers or that, but what I will say is any deer legal caliber will kill deer. Put the right address on it and just know its limitations. And shoot to your ability and you'll get the result.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, long shots, we never encourage them, and especially if you're relatively new to it, don't take long shots. It's not a static target. It's a target that can move and things can go wrong on. So I'd always be like, one of the worst things that can ever happen in any hunting situation or any hunting scenario is that you wound an animal. And if you're going to do it for any length of time, unfortunately, this could happen at some point. And it's a feeling that haunts you for days after.
Without a doubt. There's no...
Especially if it's not recovered.
Yeah.
You know?
And look, I'll be the first, I've said it many times, I'm not as long as you or not haven't shot. You've probably forgotten about more deer than I've shot than I would have shot, but it's happened to me, and it's exactly what you've said.
It haunts you.
It's the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah.
And you'll spend the next weeks until you get back out again and rectify. It'll be mulling over in your head, and it'll eat you up. So as you said, you put it extremely well. You shoot to your capability. There's plenty of hunters, and we've both probably shot with them, who are well capable of shooting at long distances and that are extremely proficient at it, and so on and so forth. But it's not a target competition.
It's not.
You know, so
You learn to shoot from paper.
Yeah.
And I keep saying that to lads. You don't learn to shoot from shooting at deer. You learn to shoot at paper. You learn to shoot at targets. Practice on paper never hurt.
Yeah.
Shoot at paper targets, and what you can do on paper, then you can transfer that knowledge into the field.
Yeah.
If you can do about 1.5 inches off your shooting sticks at 100 yards or 100 meters, you're above average.
Yeah.
You are above average, so be proud of yourself for that achievement.
Yeah.
Because most people, like I see in mentoring, that's why we do heart-lung. Why would I recommend a heart-lung? That's your largest kill area. Anywhere within the vicinity of 8 or so, 10 inches, you're going to kill it. You're going to hit the lungs, you're going to hit the liver, you're going to hit the heart, you're going to be up on the front end, you're going to cause shock, hemorrhaging, and that animal is going to demise really quickly. So that's why we encourage, even on the courses with Ronan, and that we encourage heart-lung shots, especially to newcomers.
Yeah.
And I hear people saying, "Oh, the game dealer will only give it." If you're entering deer stalking just for the money, you're entering
And for an
deer
extra
stalking
couple of cents per
for
kilo.
the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
That's it. The idea behind a game dealer is for surplus deer.
Yeah.
If you were under pressure via landowners or your permissions, and you think the deer pop, and I'll agree, there's only so many deer you can use, give, and find a home for. And then if you have surplus carcasses, to go to the game dealer. But and that can supplement your diesel, your ammunition, your hunting gear and equipment, and that's the way we look at it now. It supplements the gear, the bullets, and everything,
Exactly.
and that kind of a way. But if you're going to lose a few cent, the difference between neck and edge on is 50 cents a kilo. So come on, lads, shoot your ability. Don't be taken. You'll always hear the guy who shot the deer at 150 yards, back of the head, another thing. You won't hear him bragging in the pub that he took the windpipe or the jawbone off a deer. They're the shots you won't hear about. So
yeah, and look, I think you were saying there about shooting on paper, and I remember myself when I started first exactly like that, and you think you have it nailed, and you go out in the wild, and then your first deer in that scope, the scope just rattles that extra little bit because it's a live animal. It's the biggest thing you put in the scope. So as you rightly said there, you'll hear all of the, look, we got slated, because obviously we're in the public domain and so on, you know, encouraging the heart and lung and bad shot placement and stuff like that. And I remember over in Hungary, the one of the lads over there said, you know, a good heart and lung shot is better than any miss, you know. So that's just the easiest way to put it.
It's just, and especially, as I say, encouraging new people into the sport.
Exactly,
they shouldn't be put under the pressure to shoot head and neck, and that's really to the professional. And to be honest, any of those shots taken should be definitely less than 100 yards.
Yeah,
definitely less than 100 yards. We hear all this, and we see other people bragging that I only do head and neck. But we're hearing about your hits, and we're not hearing about your misses, or the ones that you thought you missed, but you actually cut across the windpipe.
Yeah.
And that deer ran off totally like it wasn't hit at all to die a slow, lingering, horrible death in the woods. So, and none of us are about that.
And that's the thing, and that's what we're talking about, that, but the optics and so on and so forth. Hunting gets a bad enough rap from people who don't understand and don't like it anyway. What we don't want is one of these animals running out in a populated area with you know, a jaw hanging off, or you know what I'm saying, as you rightly said, we've seen a couple of them where it would be questionable whether there was a poor shot placement and it ended up in a village somewhere and photographed and all that kind of stuff. So we don't need that.
And actually, when you say that, some of these incidents have actually occurred where deer with badly placed shots have turned up and had to be dealt with. Another thing I'm not sure if you're aware of, I'm involved with Peter Windsor's group.
Yes.
I don't know if you're...
I'm just actually going to go on to that, and this is the last time I was down here. You were saying you have a WhatsApp group. This is a fantastic initiative. Talk us through it, Dave.
It was set up initially by Peter Windsor, and Peter Windsor was dealing with quite a number of road traffic incidents involving deer and cars. Now, a lot of the time when these incidents take place between deer and cars, either nearly 30% of the time the deer is dead, another 30% it's gone off injured and what, but sometimes it remains at the scene and needs to be euthanized and put down. So Peter was being called out to a lot of these accidents which took place with motorists and deer, and the deer needed to be put down. It's just an animal welfare issue that needs to be dealt with. And we were chatting together, and then there was more people getting involved in it. And then we saw, well, there's an interest. And the thing about this is the interest is generally from the hunting community.
Yeah.
And the hunting community are doing this purely voluntary.
Yeah.
So we decided, well, if they're going to do it, they might as well do it right. So with my background on animal slaughter and that, and I was trained with the use and maintenance of captive bolts and how to correctly use them and that, because here in Ireland it's actually illegal to discharge any firearm within 50 feet of the centre of a public road.
Yeah.
So it also, there's the thing, when people look at a firearm coming out of a vehicle, going over the animal, it's the public perception,
the optics of it,
of a firearm. There's a gun here, and it doesn't like portray the kind of image that we want to give to that incident.
Yes.
So we said, well, we got Peter and myself, we have authorizations for captive bolt. It's not a license, it's an authorization. We told our superintendents, who are very helpful in the authorization, and we told them what we wanted them for, and we went ahead and we started running courses. We've run 2 or 3 very successful courses with total volunteers coming in, and everyone, we have a written test, and then I speak all the practical side and the maintenance of the captive bolt, the shot placement. I cover deer. I actually cover domestic wildlife, domestic stock as well.
Yeah.
And I show them how to deal, the approach. Then we dealing with the public at these accidents, explaining what you're about to do, the reasons behind it. You know, like most public would see some animal injured and say, "Oh, a vet, can it be saved?"
Yeah.
But you know, there's 2 reasons. Like a lot of the animals are euthanized because, number one, if you were to put a lot of money into a wild animal trying to get it to recover to veterinary, there's a huge cost to that, which no one wants to incur.
Yeah.
So the best option is to euthanize the animal, and that's to put it down. And on the side, we move the public away. It's done very humanely and instantly, and the people that are doing it on Peter Windsor's course, the Humane Dispatch course, is all properly trained. A lot of them now have authorizations for captive bolts. What happens is a call goes into different districts, and usually that station would have someone in there that knows there's someone, or else they'd contact Peter, and Peter would put it up on a huge WhatsApp group where everyone can see there's been an accident at this location, anyone available to do it. And so far, the rates have been nearly 98% rates that someone has made it to the scene to deal with that incident.
Brilliant.
And both the police and everyone involved so far have been very happy with this group, the efficiency of it, the training that it received, and it's just been a win-win. For public perception, it shows hunters care.
Yeah.
From animal welfare perspective, it's very humane. The people carrying out this are well trained.
Yeah.
And then the public relations, we also teach how to deal with the public at such incidents, and everything so far from both from the policing side of it to the public side of it, and has been so well received. And I say fair play to Peter for putting it all together, and I was just so glad he invited me in as part of the training to it. And I think the last time we had 35 people at the last training course.
Fantastic.
And 35, and we make sure that everyone that comes in is there for the right reasons and that they're suitable candidates, and then they're entered into the WhatsApp group, and 95 to 98% of call-outs have been adhered to and have been dealt with by someone in this. Now we have someone in every county in Ireland. We have a number of people in the Wicklow area, the Dublin area, even down, I cover all this area from Portlaoise to Burr and all this area, and I've been called out several times. And then over Galway side, we have people trained up over on Galway side, and we've just such a wide span, and it's been such a success story that the general public aren't even aware of its existence, but policing are definitely aware, and Garda Síochána are definitely aware and are using the services of Peter Windsor's group regularly, which is it's been a total success story.
That's phenomenal. And you were saying there the authorizations. Talk us through that. It's different than the licensing.
Yeah, it isn't a firearms application. You're looking for the authorization to hold a captive bolt for animal destruction. It's not a firearm because it doesn't discharge a bullet.
Yeah.
So what it does is it's a unit that you would in a blank cartridge, and the blank cartridge causes an explosion in the chamber, which pushes out a dipped 9mm bolt. This 9mm bolt is what stuns and kills the animal. It goes through central cortex of the animal's brain, instantly stunning and killing it, and then you just quickly do a bleed, and the animal, there's no jumping around, kicking or anything, and I teach everyone on the courses how to place it, how to do it correctly, how to do the angles, and the authorization is approved by our superintendent. So if you were part of this group, Peter would do you out a letter saying that you are part of this group, you've received training on the use and maintenance of a captive bolt, and that the reasons you want to use it is you're going as a volunteer to deal with roadside casualties. And it's just, so far the response from Garda Síochána have been very positive, and any on Garda Síochána that have been at these accidents, and when someone turned up and seen how professionally it was all handled, they're very impressed. So it has been a real success story that's expanding all the time, and at the moment we have definitely someone in every county in Ireland.
Brilliant.
And we can generally cover, we've done Waterford, people down in Kerry, Cork, Galway, Tipperary, Offaly. We have nearly every county covered. And the thing about this group is, once you're into the group, you can actually see every call out that comes, and you'll see that, God, I'm in a group that's involved, I see all the call-outs. There hasn't been one in my area, but I'm here if there is. And some of the guys, in fairness to them, have travelled over an hour to get to a road traffic accident involving an animal of their own time to put it down for no pay, no self-gain, and they've done it purely out of an animal welfare perspective. So the volunteers involved in that group are all good people. Peter put it really good, and I'm just part of the training of this, and it's been such a success story. And
fair play. And look, that even from the byproduct of that, obviously, is the optics from a public perspective.
Yeah,
it's the necessity for hunters. We can sing from the rooftops as well about the necessity of hunters for preserving wildlife and conservation. And this is just another one of them. I think anything that's positive should be sung from the.
And as I said, it's not about killing. It's an animal welfare issue that's been dealt with professionally and as humanely as possible by trained individuals.
Yeah.
By trained individuals that did a practical course. When we run the course, we actually have all the animal heads, we have captive bulls, we have the munitions, we explain all the colours of the blanks to show what they're suitable for. We strip them, we get everyone stripping captive bulls, reassembling them, placing them, angles, we teach everything on it. It's a very comprehensive, practical course. And then once you pass this, you have a written test at the end of it. And once you pass this, then you go for approval into the WhatsApp group. And then you will see every call out and every animal, and there'll be a picture taken of the animal. So it's there for records. All people to see that it is taking place, and I'm proud to be part of this group, and I'm waiting in my area, and I'm ready to help. And some people have gone out of their way and travelled some distances to help deal with situations involving RTAs with animals.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
I suppose, you talked briefly about hunting abroad. Much experience in that, Dave?
I've hunted abroad, yeah. My first taste of hunting abroad was in Scotland. I used to go across to my friend Mark Nibs, who's also a firearms dealer in England, and I used to go across with Mark, and we used to go head up to Scotland, and I recall many, many good memories of roe and sika, and reds were a bit rough back then, but we did manage to get them out. We did reds, and we had really good times and really good people. And Dick, in later years, Dick was along, I'll say at this point, their butcheries could do with a bit of touching up. They've actually sent me a few videos of head removing, and I always enjoy a few of my friends, even friends that are at it years, I still make fun of their head removal.
Yeah.
That'll be good. But it's only hunting banter.
Absolutely.
It's only hunting banter. But that would have been my first taste of shooting outside of the country, was Scotland, and it was a new species. It was roe.
Yeah.
One thing I can say about roe is they're lovely deer to carry out and extract.
Yeah. Compared to what we have.
After that, then, my shooting experiences would have been in Eastern Europe, wild boar. I've shot quite numerous wild boar via high seats, and I've done some driven hunts as well in Slovakia, Poland, and Czech Republic. Great experiences, and really great people. But as most people that are involved in hunting in general are of good character and sound, and with the general interest in hunting, we generally bond.
Yeah, you have kindred spirits.
Yeah, kindred spirits with a passion for what we do and animals we pursue. So that's another part of hunting. And then there, a few years ago, I took a trip over to Sweden for a moose hunt.
Yes.
Now, it's a big ask, a moose hunt, and for things to go. So the guy said to me, you have 3 days to get your moose. We can't guarantee you one. You mightn't even see a moose, but you'll come over anyway.
Yeah.
So I decided to bring my youngest son over with me, Adam, for the experience. And he thought, yeah. So we had connecting flights, which totally stressed me out. I don't travel well.
Yeah.
And connecting flights, the pressure of that. But we got there after a long trip and connecting flights, and we got to Sweden to be saying, well, when are we hunting? To learn we had a 16-hour drive.
To even get
a 16-hour drive to the hunting location. So we both we're nearly going to go home at this stage, but we martyred on, and we got to the hunting location. And again, the people we were introduced to and the people we met were of top class, and they couldn't do enough for us. And they said, we really would love you. You have 3 days to get this moose. And they brought in a guy who was a moose dog. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a moose dog. And we made plans for hunting the following day. So we went off on a hunt, and would you believe it? As the look of the Irish, the dog got onto a moose on the first day. Now, the maximum head I could get, whatever it was anyway, I could shoot it under a certain, but this was the maximum.
Yeah.
So I would have been happy with any kind of a moose, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, so we travelled, we followed this moose across bogs and into woods, and the dog held it up a few times, and we heard it barking, and then we get a glimpse of the moose, and this minute it take off again. So we followed it for about 5 kilometres up and down across moors and scrubland and everything. I really enjoyed it, and I remember Caperkilly getting up.
Wow.
And just the scenery there was unbelievable. The cold was kind of a fresh cold. It's not like the cold we had, the damp, wet cold.
Yeah.
It was a fresh, sharp cold, and I totally enjoyed it. The man I was out was definitely top of the class in what he was doing. And we tracked in, and finally he said, the dog is holding the moose just over this hillside, so we'll come around. And I was using a Blaser 8X57. It's a caliber we're not too familiar with here, but it's quite an old caliber. It's based on the Mauser 57 case, but it's firing an 8mm bullet. Well, I can't say this was my only time ever to use it. So I came around the corner, and I was just in shock at the size of this thing, because it made the dog look like a chihuahua.
Yeah.
And this moose was staring at the dog, and it had quite a significant head. And your man says, give me the thumbs up. So I fired a shot. Nothing happened. My heart sank. I said, oh my God. Reloaded, fired again, nothing. The moose started to walk away, fired again, until the guide put his hand on my shoulder and said, David, stop firing. He's dead. Just doesn't realise it.
Yeah.
And within seconds of him saying that, the animal healed over and demised and fell, and I was just, the relief and just coming up, and Adam was coming in with the other guys with the quads and coming over to see it. And it was just, when you're up against an animal that size, like I've dealt with some quite big reds, but there's no comparison.
Yeah.
To a moose and a red. It was just, its legs was longer than I am tall.
Yeah.
Not saying I'm a giant, but it was just an immense animal, and just an animal to be up with. And we were so impressed with the size of it. And it actually ended up being the biggest head, the maximum that I could have took.
Just by chance.
So just by chance, the look of the Irish was in, and that trophy was sent back to me. And it's proudly in my hallway, just to bring back the memory. And we had such a brilliant time. We shot some fallow over there. Some fabulous fallow were over there, and wild boar, and we shot some roe while there. And the hunting trip and experience, and thanks to our hosts, was absolutely second to none. And I did them the favour, and we did an exchange hunt with some of those, and we arranged hunting. And so they wanted, of course, Sika. I arranged Sika for them, and they all went home with a good representative. And two of them wanted this goat, the wild Irish goat, and that ended up being very successful for them. So we're friends for life, and they went home happy.
Bonded for life,
we went home, and I regularly hear from them. And the shooting there and the location was was truly spectacular, and I was really appreciative of their work. And the moose is proudly there to bring back all the memories when I look up at it in the hallway.
But I actually seen, you showed me some of the pictures when you were extracting the animals and so on and so forth. It's one of the things probably I know when we went to Hungary and the UK and stuff, you know, after, you know, I know a lot of the guys and stuff would be used to, you know, the hunter pulling the trigger and then they set about to work. And I remember one of the first times myself and Rob were over and, you know, pulling the trigger and then our sleeves go up and you want to get stuck in and they're looking at you as if to say, no, this is, you know, this is our gate, you know, you don't. And I think they like that. I think about the Irish, we're well used to getting stuck into the marshy, boggy ground. So over there, it's not a big deal for us to get stuck. I know we're well regarded, and I think that's a good thing to have, because we've a lot to offer here. I think, and as you rightly said,
I think we have. I couldn't agree more.
And long may it continue. Dave, that's an hour and 20. We're going to have to do a part 2. But it was a privilege to have you on. Thanks for agreeing to it. You have just agreed now on air that you're going to come back on again. Have another chat.
I'll do another
stint.
No problem at all.
Listen, thanks a million, Dave. Really, really appreciate it.
Okay. No problem. You're welcome.